the story that we think is the most important today. That is the alleged and apparent setback to the COVID-19 trials. Now, the Oxford University AstraZeneca partnership was one of the most promising among the many companies that in our race to develop a COVID-19 vaccination. It's at stage 3, which is a very crucial stage where thousands of people are given this test vaccination to see how it works. One of these people developed an unexpected illness. And researchers right now are trying to find out if that illness was because of the vaccination that was injected or it was completely unrelated. The outcome of that probe will determine what happens next with this vaccine. But it also brings into sharp highlight how uncertain this path is. And for those who are expecting a vaccine to be around the corner, available to everyone by the end of 2020, hence the whole COVID-19 pandemic to be behind us, may be in for a bit of a shock. There are, of course, reports earlier this evening that the trial may resume as early as next week, but we'll wait for official word on that. Meanwhile, what does this mean for the whole race to the vaccine and the safety of vaccines? To speak on that, I have a very special set of guests lined up for you. Dr. K Ganguly is joining us this evening. He's a scientist and former Director General of the ICMR. Dr. Ambarish Dutta, who is an additional Professor of Epidemiology at the Indian Institute of Public Health, is on the show. And of course, we have with us Dr. Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, Executive Chairperson of Biocon. Welcome to all of you and thank you for speaking with us on this very crucial subject. Dr. Shaw, you've put your views out there on how this doesn't mean that a vaccine is going to be around the corner. Do you think this proves that there will be a significant delay in any kind of effective vaccine actually hitting global markets, considering that many are in this stage 3, and stage 3 seems to be the precarious one because it's a larger pool of people who are being tested?
Tamanna, first and foremost, I think everyone, the lay person, should understand that it does take time to develop a vaccine. I think this particular event is not unusual, and this is the very reason why you cannot rush vaccine development. You cannot compress a 1-year timeline into 3 months, which is what all vaccine companies are trying to do. Now, I think the medical and pharmaceutical world have been cautioning the waiting public that, look, it is going to take some time. Of course, politics has put a lot of pressure on accelerating the vaccine development process. But I think this is something that often happens in vaccine development. And I think we should not really get too alarmed at this point in time because what we need to really see, and this is why you need to do vaccine development in the right way, because if you do have too many serious adverse events, that is a cause for worry. This could be a one-off, and this could resolve very fast and you can resume the study. But I hope people understand why we are all so cautious about not predicting the vaccine for public use by the end of the year. I think people must understand the necessity of establishing safety and efficacy and durability of response for at least a year, because that would be the shortest possible time in which you would actually take a call on whether to approve a vaccine or not. Trying to give it emergency use authorization on 3 months data, I think is really taking a big risk and you're putting people at risk. So I will end there because I'm sure Dr. Ganguly and Dr. Datta have more to add.
Yes. Dr. Ganguly, the question is, does this bring into highlight this entire question for all the other vaccine candidates as well? AstraZeneca has come out and talked about this. They have said that they are halting this in the UK, but the trials for that very same vaccine in India right now are not being halted. SII, which is developing it in India, put out a statement today saying that they see no reason to halt it here. I want to understand why. Is it a different parameter here, or would it still be safe to try out and continue trials for these vaccines in India when it's being halted in the UK?
No, actually, this was misleading. AstraZeneca has declared that they have paused the trial, not stopped, paused the trial world over, whatever were the sites. So that applies to Serum Institute of India also. Vaccine development is not a race. It is a matter of public trust. If it fails and public trust erodes, there are a lot of anti-vaccine activists. They go to court. It will be a disaster. In this particular case, although we have an urgency because we are losing hundreds of billions dollars per day globally because of this. So there is a tremendous urgency, but it should not be at the term of the safety and efficacy. This is very, very important. Phase 3 trial is one of the most important part because it covers a lot of ethnicity, lot of different varying populations and provides efficacy as well as a safety in this larger population. So here AstraZeneca got, in this particular person, transverse myelitis. It is one of the neurologic disease. COVID infection itself causes neurologic disorders. It causes depression. It goes to microglial cells. It also causes in some subjects their association of Guillain-Barré syndrome. That is why AstraZeneca has taken it very, very seriously. And they are doing a very detailed examination. Oxford group is a very ethical group. It has paused in previously its AIDS vaccine initiative also because they got some problems while they were doing the trial. And something unprecedented happened. I have never seen it happen in the world before. All the 9 front-runner vaccine companies have got together and made a declaration that they will be ethical, they will not cut corners, and they will not come under any political pressure. This is very, very reassuring that at least the vaccine companies themselves are acting very responsibly and they have given a pause. Now, when it will start is very difficult to say. It may take few days, it may take few weeks, or it may take months also. This is what William Hazeltine has opined,
yes.
and I agree with that it may take some time. So I will stop here so that Dr. Datta could also get some time to say what he wants to say.
Yes, this is a very thoughtful panel. Thank you, Dr. Shaw and Dr. Ganguly, to allow the next person to also add in. I really appreciate it. Dr. Datta, I want to come specifically on the case of ethics. How can we be sure that all over the world, everyone developing a vaccine will have the same standards? Can we be sure of that? We have had vaccine nationalism, as the WHO calls it, with one nation, Russia, saying that, we've already got a vaccine, it will be out by October. China is claiming some huge leaps and bounds in vaccines. How will we make sure that, no such case has come about? It seems from what we're reading today that this is very common, that during phase 3 trials, very often you have someone who develops a sickness and then you have to stop and check whether it's because of the vaccine or coincidentally that person got ill.
Now taking a cue from what Professor Ganguly has just alluded to, of course there is vaccine nationalism that we see across the globe. I mean, there is a race to find a vaccine, and naturally because there is a big urgency. But at the same time, as Professor Ganguly was mentioning, that most of the front runners have joined and sort of made a joint statement that they will stick to the ethics of building a vaccine and they will not cut corners on that. But at the same time, we should be also wary of the fact that there are Operation Warp Speed. Elections in US are on the anvil, and there is almost statement by the politicians as well as the scientist politicians, as I would like to mention some of them, who are saying that even the vaccines may be ready by end of October, just the week before the US elections. So we should be a little wary of that. as Ms. Mazumdar Shaw as well as Professor Ganguly had alluded to, these processes take a lot of time, especially the phase 3s, where each and every hazard or risk has to be evaluated, whether it's caused by the vaccine or it is inadvertent, and whether the vaccine can cause such risks in large scale and whether it will outweigh the benefit very much. In that case, the vaccine should definitely be called off. And so, I mean, all these should be kept in, should be kept into the right perspective when the judgment is made by especially the regulatory authorities like FDA, and hope that the world over it will be done in the right possible ethical way that one can think of. But at the same time, we should be wary of the politics and the nationalism that is going around these vaccines also. So, I mean, that is something which always worries me.
You know, Ms. Shaw, I want to get your point of view on the dangers of vaccine nationalism. Yes, Dr. Dutt, I want to get Ms. Shaw's view on vaccine nationalism and the dangers thereby. Another question that I want to get your view on is what I asked Dr. Ganguly. We are not stopping the trials here. If you see the statement by SII today, the one they have sent, they say, commenting on the recent reports on AstraZeneca halting the trials in the UK, Serum Institute of India said, we can't comment much on the UK trials, but they have been paused for further review and they hope to restart soon. As far as Indian trials are concerned, it is continuing and we have faced no issues at all. Are they perhaps referring to other trials because SII is involved in a couple of different vaccination development projects?
So I just don't have clarity, Tamanna, on whether they're referring to the Oxford vaccine or whether they're referring to the BCG vaccine or what. So I can't comment, but I'm surprised if they continue with the AstraZeneca the Oxford vaccine trial, despite this particular pause, because, it is in the best interest of global data sharing that, they don't continue with the trial till they really get more clarity on what has caused this serious adverse event, is my view. And as far as nationalism is concerned, yes, there is a lot of intense nationalism because everybody wants to rely on the vaccine to open up the economy and to grow the economy. That is why everyone wants to make sure that they get their quota of vaccine to immunize their entire population. And of course, one thing we must realize that the vaccines are going to take time, and we must understand that the economy has to go on, because I don't think we can afford any more lockdowns. That is my view. And in order to basically make sure that we address the livelihood question, I think we have to learn to keep our environment safe. We have to develop treatment regimens which lower this life-threatening fear that everyone has of the vaccine. And the moment you really drive down mortality to near zero levels, I think we'll be in a much safer place. Right now, I think people are so fearful of coronavirus because they think the moment they test positive, it's like a Russian roulette. Will they live or will they suddenly, die? And I have been through COVID myself. I believe that we are not managing the disease properly. I think we need to test early. We need to use science to manage COVID, both in terms of testing and the treatment itself. That's another discussion we can have. But I, for one, believe that having this nationalism also must remind people that this virus does not see borders, okay? This particular virus has definitely, announced to the world that irrespective of affluence or the geographical location, it is going to attack anyone and everyone. So just immunizing your population, you can't really say that you're really protected from this virus in the rest of the world. So I think, you need to make sure that there is a global effort to really fight this pandemic. And in fact, it is very disappointing that there is this battle for, reserving the stockpiling of vaccines, because this is a global fight. There has to be an equitable sharing of the vaccines that are being developed. And I think this is what it ought to be. I'm very happy that at least the vaccine producers have taken this pledge of not cutting corners and at least making sure that they follow the regulatory requirements of safety efficacy. And I think all of them are batting for this, which is a very good sign. But when it comes to vaccine nationalism, I wish they would actually follow suit. I wish the countries would take a pledge to say that, we will make sure that vaccines are given to every part of the world where there are vulnerable populations, where they need it the most. I think those are the kind of things we need to do.
Yes. A couple of questions, Dr. Ganguly, on what this does, and very simply put, for vaccine candidates to have a vaccine this quickly, we need a larger group of test subjects, essentially. Will this incident not deter the process of getting more trial candidates on board, number one? And number two, will it not plant a seed of doubt in the mind of people that are these vaccines really going to be safe when they finally hit our shores?
Yeah, actually, there's a very good question, Tamanna. There is always an effort to create a bouquet of products. So if one gets in a pause or delayed, you have other candidates which could be used. So in this, there are some very strong frontrunners, the Moderna, the Pfizer-BioNTech, the Genova of India, the two other have the Bharat Biotech and Zydus Cadila has completed phase 1, and then Johnson and Johnson, Novavax. These are all front runners. And these, apart from that, the Chinese vaccine, CanSino, etc., are all front runners. So some of them will succeed. So that is why you need to have multiple candidates to create the vaccine nationalism, to prevent the vaccine nationalism, which is there. One of the good point is this, that governments are actually supporting vaccine manufacture even before the phase 3 has been completed. It might have to be thrown in the seawater, but this monetary risk many governments have taken up. So by 2021, we will have about 1 billion doses. So Seth Berkley of Gavi has created a COVAX coalition in which 177 countries have signed up. 20% vaccines will go to each country, and 3% of them will go to the healthcare workers, frontline workers. They comprise 3% of the population of a country, and then will go to the most vulnerable. So and then it might go to the teachers, so that kids could go to the school. And if they infect teachers, the system doesn't get paralyzed. So there is a plan. Each country is creating a plan for distribution of this. But distribution, what India and other countries are not used to adult vaccination. Very few adult vaccination program is there to really create the appropriate distribution, because each vaccine has a different requirement of cold chain. It has a different way it is administered. So there is a huge amount of training and distribution and other things are required. I think people should start right away. The countries should start right away to create this manpower, distribution system and supply chain management. If they do, there will be some kind of equitable distribution, but whole population cannot be vaccinated. That is impossible.
Dr. Shaw, you want to quickly come in on this point? I was speaking to another expert today who talked about, not mistaking the vaccine for a panacea of all of our problems, that it will provide 100% eradication like the polio vaccine did. It's just not designed this way, is what he told me. Do you think that that's an important point people have to remember, that it's not as if the vaccine is out and, then this whole problem is behind us?
Well, like what Professor Ganguly just mentioned, to actually, first and foremost, you have to understand that you will never be able to immunize the entire population. But you will be able to immunize a large percentage of the population, and thereby, you basically, uh, create this sort of air of safety about, the virus. Having said that, when you say that is it the panacea of all the problems, obviously not. I mean, no virus really leaves our system. I mean, you continuously find new pandemics coming into the, coming to hit us. And as someone says, we actually have to learn from this pandemic because the next pandemic is not too far away. We have seen many pandemics in the recent few decades and don't seem to have learned lessons. I think we need to understand that with all the technology that we have developed, there needs to be now going forward a rapid response to a new pandemic. How are we going to track any new pandemic which is emerging? And how do we make sure that we actually are more prepared than we are today to face that pandemic? I think, Dr. Datta is an epidemiologist. He can actually tell you that this is not an easy matter. We have just neglected it and ignored it and taken it for granted. I think this is a very rude shock we have got, the whole world has got, because we just ignored pandemics, these infectious diseases is something which even the developed world thought it will never affect them. But they have been the worst affected because they really are not prepared for such, eventualities. So I think let's use this as a response planning, preparedness planning, sort of methodology to face the next pandemic.
One lesson that we definitely could have learned, and I was quite dismayed to read this, was how pollution levels were largely back. This is one thing that had stopped or gone down a bit because of COVID-19 and lockdowns that people put in place. That was another lesson that we could have hopefully learned. But I'll have to end on this note and thank all of our panelists for coming in on a very, very important subject. So, to put it all together in a nutshell, the one patient falling ill during a trial is not unusual. It happens very often in these processes. It doesn't mean that the whole position is derailed, but it does mean that we have to be careful about how these vaccinations are being created and how these trials are being run. The trial could resume again. It also means that a final vaccine could be delayed. In fact, there's some reports that say that it will hit commercially in India for everyone maybe by the end of 2021. So keep your patience until then.